What is up, boxing fans? Back at it again from Las Vegas headquarters for FightHype.com and your man Sean Zittel. Here to talk. Hold on, let me just shut some things off. But Sean Zittel here once again with some boxing. Well, usually we do the round by rounds here in the office. We've done a couple recaps, Z-caps, but tonight Spence Thurman, all but official pretty much. Looks like it's going to be penciled in for some point in April. Keith Thurman hasn't fought since Mario Barrios in early February of last year. Won handily in that fight. Errol Spence, of course, picked up his third belt, stopping Yordenis Ugas at AT&T Stadium in Texas last year, in April of last year. So they fought about 2 months apart, 2.5 months apart. I was ringside at both fights, and I thought with the fight basically being, all but official now, that we would, deep dive into it or give a first thoughts, first looks at it, and also take a look at what this means for the fight. Everyone primarily wanted in this division, which was Spence and Crawford for all four of the belts. That's gone by the wayside, not just in 2022, but obviously for the first half of 2023 as well. So a few things to get into tonight. We're gonna chew on Spence and Thurman. We're so used to saying Crawford, Spence, Spence, Crawford over the last 12 months. We're going to, I'll give you guys my initial thoughts on who's going to win that fight. I want to get some thoughts in the chat by you guys. And I want to get thoughts on the chat on your level of excitement for Spence Thurman. If you aren't excited, if you are excited for Spence and Thurman. And I also want to take a look at where should Terrence Crawford go now that the Spence fight looks to officially be off the table for the first half of the year. And where is Spence going to stay at 54 now, or will he head back down to 47, or have we seen the last of Errol Spence being a world champion at 47? Was Ugas, actually the swan song last April? So we'll take a look at that. Let me take a look at my notes. I think I got a couple things penned in, and that should about do it to get us started. Let me check the chat and see what's up, chat, before we sink our teeth into this. Southpaw TV, what's up, bro? Why don't Gervonta like y'all? I don't know. You gotta ask Tank. But Gervonta is coming off a very good 8th round stoppage of Hector Luis Garcia. Gervonta continues to improve and get more relaxed and confident fighting in front of those big crowds and gaining experience against different styles. He's fought some tall guys like Barrios. He's fought, Pedraza was a rangy guy. Santa Cruz coming up in weight, but still had good height to him to put the weight on. And he's fought, veterans like Gamboa, Esau Cruz, who's a come-forward pressure fighter. So Tank's really rounded into his peak now, into his full prime, and didn't throw a lot of punches per round. He never does, but he did look pretty damn good over the weekend. So is Spence vacating, or ask Luis Reyes? I don't know if he's vacating for good. That remains to be seen, but yeah, belts aren't on the line. This is not a 147-pound fight. He's going up to 154. And let's take a look real quick at the tweet. Well, here's your guys' chat, actually. But this is the official tweet. Spence and Thurman looks to be on for a junior middleweight fight. Errol Spence and Keith Thurman are finalizing a deal for a 154-pound fight. Expect to take place, sources told ESPN's Mike Coppinger. Spence will then have 60 days to close a deal for a long undisputed welterweight championship bout with Crawford, Terrence Crawford. Interesting. So, as it pertains to the question of if he's going to vacate or not, I wonder if the 60 days is the sanctioning body's stipulation following the Thurman fight on whether or not he has to vacate. Which, you got what's it, Luis Reyes? You got it, man. Molly Mall says, sad to say, but Boots isn't going to get any of these guys. Cherry Chris saying, I don't know why this fight's at 154. It should be at 147. Yeah, well, some people are speculating, and it is speculation. We haven't got a chance to talk to Errol or Keith yet, but some people are speculating this is Errol's way of not giving Keith a chance at the titles. Because if you recall, back after, is before Errol got to fight Kell Brook, he was knocking on Keith Thurman's door, after knocking out Leonard Bundu, and Keith ultimately never got in the ring with Errol for one reason or another, and so Errol considered that a duck. He didn't let him fight for his world title, so now, even though Errol said he would never fight Keith, okay, he's been convinced, money talks, to get in the ring with him, but not for his welterweight titles. maybe that's the case. Maybe Errol just is being a little vengeful here and spiteful, which helps fighters in the ring. Being mean, and Errol is still mean. He's not in his 20s anymore. He's 32, but he's still a mean young man, and that's gonna help him in this fight with Keith Thurman. I think Keith Thurman, happily married guy. We know he has a little bit of a hippie in him. He's a little closer to being a subdued, peaceful soul, like my man Sean Porter, who stepped away from the sport. He's a peaceful, subdued soul these days. Now, a lot of that fire through all the wars, it went out. Went out gracefully. Spence still has that a little bit more than Thurman, and that can help him in this fight. But we'll see. Just reading some of the comments before I jump into something here. Spence is scared to lose them straps. Well, at least on the positive side, though, you don't have to worry about any weight drain excuses. These guys have been making welterweight. Keith back in the day when he was fighting like Carlos Quintana on HBO, he fought at 154. So, Keith's been making 47 for a decade. Errol's been making 47 for a decade. No excuses about being hydrated or rehydrated. And then if we look at Keith, here's Keith at his peak, where he had maybe he won the most significant fight of his career. This is heading into Danny Garcia, and Keith wins the WBA, WBC welterweight titles in 2017. He unifies, makes him essentially the man of the division. I think he may have even been the Ring Magazine champ too to go along with it. Oops, Keith looking like the fifth member of Bone Thugs and Harmony right there, but and right there too. Dan Birmingham, underrated coach right there behind him. But Keith, if you look at his physique right here, this is peak Keith Thurman, and and Keith isn't as athletic, especially with his feet. He can't move around for 12 rounds like he once did. He steps over more now. Those feet aren't gliding around the ring like they did in his 20s. But if you look at the weigh-in for the Barrios fight in comparison, on the bright side for Keith Thurman, if you're a Keith Thurman fan, he did look in better physical shape, but weigh-ins don't win fights, and a guy can bring a better physique into the body and actually perform worse than he would, not looking as sculpted on the scales. But, Keith at least did look, in shape for that Barrios fight. Some people would be concerned that one time isn't one time with the punching power anymore, because Barrios, a guy who's really won an interim title at 140, he got knocked out by a lightweight in Tank Davis fighting at 140, and he's able to hold up to the power of Keith Thurman for 12 rounds. So, that didn't bode well for sizing up the punching power of Keith Thurman, but he did look good against Mario Barrios, and relatively speaking, and he won just about every round in that fight. And I do think he is a more dangerous fight. He's the most dangerous fight Errol Spence has had since Sean Porter. I think he's more dangerous and brings more to the table offensively, and is more dangerous than Yordenis Ugas. He's not as in as good condition as Ugas these days. Ugas was maybe a little hungrier because he hadn't already earned the kind of money and accolades Keith has already. He's more active than Keith was, but I still think Keith, even at this stage, is more dangerous than Ugas, and I think he's more dangerous than Danny, who's really was a natural 140-pounder. So let me just check chat for a minute here. This fight is happening in Texas or Vegas, not announced just yet. I'm imagining Vegas, though. But why fight Thurman if he's no longer his mandatory? He's doing Al a favor, says Luis Reyes. All right, so chat, before I kind of sink my teeth into who I initially think is going to win this fight, and I think most of us favor Spence, but quickly, in the chat, who do you guys, scale of 1 to 10, how do we judge this fight? Thurman Spence, not for the welterweight title. It's going to be fought at 54. Scale of 1 to 10, how do we judge this fight? What's the buzz check for this one? Just curious before we... Will Spence lose one of his belts? No, none of the belts will be on the line, Apollo. Just the 154 fight. 7 out of 10. Excitement level. Duck out of 10, says Will.I.Am. Ramirez, 7. 6 from Wilson. Dreco King says at 154, this is 50-50. Okay. Chosen 8 out of 10 excitement. Dr. Rubin 7. This is payback for Thurman, and then he will retire. The belt's not on the line. Thurman's going to surprise everyone. This is a 50-50, again, says Dreco. Bud fans cheering for Thurman. 9 from John Leonard. John's into it, darkest light, just a 5 out of 10. So far, you guys are in the same neighborhood I'm at. Mine's was a 7 out of 10. Stan Jonas would have been like a 4. You know, Edemanis Stan Jonas. You know, Crawford Avanesian was like a 1. So, yeah, Spence and Thurman back in the day would have been a 9 or a 10. Now, it's more, 7 sounds about right. Brenda McDonald gave it a 0. Carson, 10 out of 10. Just like my man Carson. Shout out to you, Carson. Shout out, brother. 10 out of 10 from All Around Hustle. Okay, so actually, people in the chat looking forward to the fight, and I am too. You know, I do think Thurman was more dangerous a couple years ago. I think Thurman, back when he fought Sean and he fought Danny, was the most athletic welterweight in the division, and I think he had the kind of foot speed and hand speed that rivaled Terrence, but Terrence was a little guy coming up from 35, and Keith was a lifelong welterweight. So, but Keith, you know, not as consistent as Terrence. You know, even admitted when he fought Sean, I only got to win 7 out of 12 rounds, and Keith, you know, could fight in spurts. But back then, his foot speed, hand speed, explosiveness, and athleticism, he was, you know, outside of durability and sometimes conditioning issues, you know, the full package. And now that foot speed isn't what it once was, so it's going to be easier for Errol Spence to get into range now. And Keith Thurman, he fights in spurts a lot, at least in comparison to Errol Spence. Errol Spence is going to fight 3 minutes of every round. He's going to set it all up behind the jab. And, you know, to get into some numbers, you know what, I might as well bring them up while we're here. Just to compare and contrast their most previous fights, punch stat wise. So Errol Spence against Yordenis Ugas, I believe he threw 784 punches around, or not around. Excuse me, that'd be hilarious. 784 punches around, but Errol threw total 784 punches in a 10-round fight. A fight that was waved off, you know, midway through the 10th when Ugas couldn't continue. In comparison, when we go to Thurman Barrios, which went the full 12, and, you know, again, wasn't stopped in the 10th or anything. Thurman went to 665 shots. So Spence is throwing him by well over about 125 more punches, 119 more punches to be exact, despite fighting in about 2.5 less rounds. Spence in that fight had multiple rounds where he approached 100 punches a round, and Thurman was consistently at 55 punches per round against Barrios, against a guy he could tame, and he could control the pace and control the range. Against Errol Spence, it's just a constant work rate after about the second round. You know, Errol's got a more, you know, normal work rate in rounds 1 and 2, and then by 3 he shoots up to 70, 80, 90, and then he holds that pace pretty much the rest of the fight. And I don't see Keith Thurman winning this fight by decision. The only way he can win this fight by decision is by, you know, I think multiple knockdowns in a fight. I think Keith may have to consider heading into this fight going for broke in the first half, because he's not going to win a decision, and Spence will overwhelm him with activity in the second half of the fight, in all likelihood, if it gets there. But Thurman is still, in the Barrios fight, still explosive and still has that pop. He hasn't scored a knockout in a long time. I'd have to box record, but it's been some years since Keith has scored a knockout. But he still showed some pop in both hands, not just a one-handed guy. And Keith, he jumps in when he punches, but he's athletic. He knows how to do it. Feet and hands are coordinated at the same time pretty good, and he could be sneaky with his range. He could step in and bait the shot. He did that with Barrios a lot. Step in with a jab and bait the shot, and then step in and kind of jump in with his shots and explode. And what Keith was still and with hand, and he was great at coming around the guard and then finishing with that uppercut. Actually, usually with that left hand. And so Errol's punches, Keith has a good jab, but he's not going to jab as often as Errol. Errol is a better body puncher than Keith Thurman, but Keith can still get off in spurts. He's not going to be able to fight consistently 3 minutes at every round with Spence, but maybe he can slow Spence down, slow his pace down with counterpunching by walking Spence into shots. But I don't know, man. If it gets to the second half of that fight, I just think Spence, behind his constant jab, constant body work, Keith's legs aren't going to be able to keep him out of range as often as they would have a couple years ago. Coinciding with the fact that Errol's been more busy than Keith, he's more spiteful heading into this matchup. I do think, and I'm not alone here, I think most of you watching this, I think the consensus amongst boxing people will be Errol will stop him in the second half of that fight. And that is in all likelihood what I see happening. But this guy is throwing more heat than Danny Garcia or Yordenis Ugas, the last two opponents coming back. And even with his feet not what they were, he's still more athletic than Danny and Ugas were. And he still punches harder than both of them. And he can still lay traps for a fighter fighting in a style, just coming after him, coming to get him. And Errol Spence talks about bulldozing guys. If he's coming to bulldoze Keith Thurman, in the first half of that fight, Keith could be very dangerous. And, we talk a lot about Hagler Hearns as the cliche. We always ask guys heading into the fight, it's going to be like Hagler Hearns. I never asked that, but from a technical standpoint, I will ask Keith Thurman, will you consider the Hagler Hearns game plan knowing your whole career you've thrown about 50 to 60 punches around, and this guy can throw up to 90 or so around? Do you really think you can win a decision if it gets to the second half? Is your best bet to while you're still fresh and still have all your punching power and all your reflexes in the first half of the fight, take a lot of chances and try to get him out of there. Try to walk him into some bombs. I do think the fight's going to be exciting in that first half, but I just don't see, unless Thurman can win the fight by knockout, and he hasn't won a fight by a knockout in a while. Spence does often have a come forward style. He may have some opportunities to lay some traps and walk him into some big shots. But if he can't get Spence out of there in that first half, I like most of you probably out there watching, see Spence overwhelming him in the second half of this fight. Let me see the chat's thoughts. Thoughts, chat, before we touch on a few other things. You disagree, Tybone? Why? Let me know, Tybone. Banks Law says, Bud's got the PBC guys changing weight classes. Let's see. He will have to land punches flush and make Spence look bad with athleticism. Tall task. Well said, Wilson. Sand Shark says, makes no sense this fight. Thurman being Leonard, Spence being Hagler. That's how you see it, Nava J188. I hear you, and I just think that Hagler was actually a little past it. They both were. They both weren't really at their primes at the time of that fight, but I think Spence is in his prime, unlike Hagler and Ray were. There's still Sugar Ray and Marvin Hagler, but I think Thurman's more in the stage Ray and Marvin were at when they fought in '87 than Errol was. Sean, turn up your mic, please. You know what? Here, let me maybe I could throw some headphones on for you guys out there. Get this going like that. Okay. Sorry, folks. Where we at? Ugh. Gonna try and get some headphones in for you guys then. Alright, let's see if that's any better. Hello. Alright, is that any better, folks? Should be a little bit better. There we go. So, should help get us a little bit better audio then. Am I on the payroll, Brenda McDonald? No, Brenda, happy you asked, Brenda. Not on any promoter's payroll, never will be, but you might be asking, Brenda, I imagine, because you're like, where's the harsh criticism? Why are you just on to Thurman Spence as if that's really the fight people asked for? People asked for Crawford and Spence. Are you trying to cover up or protect yourself or something? I mean, no, it's just that it's been there, done that. We talked about it so many times that at a certain point,
I just want to start discussing the fights that the powers that be are making. I wanted Crawford Spence to happen. I hold both of them accountable for the fight happening. I don't just take the PBC side or take the Terrence Crawford side. I blame both parties for the fight not happening. I do think, not to be cliche, it is a problem with boxing, obviously. So, but no, Brenda, not on anyone's payroll, but I just want to sink my teeth into the fight that they did actually announce today. You know what I mean? And keep it and try to be a little positive about it too. And also moving on to the next part. Brenda and everyone else watching, what does this mean next? Okay, so where should Terrence go from here? If, of course, the Spence fight isn't happening in the first half, what if it doesn't happen, period? Or just what should Terrence do next? Well, here's the welterweight rankings. And as you can see, his mandatories are Ortiz. And if not Ortiz, it's Ennis. Obviously, boxing fans would love either one of those fights. Ortiz is an interesting fight because, you know, that Mexican and Mexican-American fan base, economically, maybe they can bring enough, help bring enough money to the table. DAZN still hopefully has deep pockets, and they can throw Terrence a big guarantee to get in the ring with Virgil Ortiz. And if, in part the PBC side isn't happy with what Terrence brings economically to the table, well, beating up, a young rising star like Virgil Ortiz in front of a sellout crowd of a lot of Mexican and Mexican-American fans, exposing Terrence to a new fan base, in what would be a huge, pretty big fight. Terrence could fight Ortiz and beat him. Maybe that, makes Spence Crawford that much bigger a fight financially and that much easier to make because it is bigger financially for all parties involved. Or if the fight never happens, then at least you continue to make legacy building fights yourself, beating a guy like Virgil Ortiz, who's a hell of a threat in the division. So I love that fight. And Terrence is a free agent. He fought the last fight on BLK Prime, but maybe he could secure a big bag from DAZN and go. I'm tempted to get on Twitter and tweet at Virgil Ortiz manager Rick Mirrigan and say, "Hey Rick, be real with us. Do you think Crawford makes sense in 2023?" I'm almost tempted to just tweet that out right now, but we're not gonna do that. We might do that another day. But I want to almost just Rick. Where is it? Do I follow him? Rick Mirrigan? Do I not follow? Anyway, Rick Mirrigan is on Twitter, and I almost just want to ask him, hey, would you make that fight with your guy if everything lines up? But looking at the rest of the division, if Spence has fought his last fight at welterweight, not saying he has, but if he has, then what's next for Spence? Well, Ennis already got his hands on the IBF belt. If Spence never fights at welterweight again, he'll simply be elevated to the full IBF welterweight champion. And then at the WBC, Thurman is in line, but Spence swerved him and said, yeah, you're not getting a shot at this belt. We're going to fight at 54 instead. So Ortiz, who's also the mandatory at the WBO, he's next in line. And then Ennis at number 3. So basically, Ortiz and Ennis are atop all the rankings except the WBA, which Ortiz is the top of them, but they dropped Ennis because he went the IBF route, these freaking sanctioning bodies. Anyways, but yeah, he went the IBF route, so they dropped him. So Ortiz is basically the mandatory for all 4 belts. Ortiz and Ennis are atop all of them. So, I mean, they are literally the perfect plan B for Terrence. I think Ortiz would make sense. He's on DAZN. Terrence is a free agent. Maybe make that happen. And then for this man right here, unified champ Errol, what's next for Errol if Errol, after Thurman, should he win, what's the big fight for Errol? Can his body even get down to 147 pounds? We all know the famous Roy Jones stories. He goes up, beats John Ruiz. I mean, that was from heavyweight all the way back down to light heavyweight, 25 pounds, not 7 pounds. But the famous story that once you move up, if you try to move back down, it's not going to work out well for your body physically. So can Spence, first of all, physically do that? He's already been saying it's tough for him to make welterweight. He's a big welterweight. Rehydrates to probably around 170 pounds, close to it. So if he's going to stay at 54, this was something that in the heat of the moment, because we're going down escalators with like 18 of us on an escalator, but in the heat of the moment, this slipped me because we never thought, okay, so if Spence is going to stay at 54, then the only big fight Fundora is a big fight, sure, that's a nice fight. but Fundora is not a world champion. The real big fight at 54 for Spence is none other than his training mate, Jermell Charlo, right? So this is when we were talking with Errol.
Well, he could fight. Yeah, he did knock out Donaire.
So listen to this.
Yeah. I mean, he can fight his ass off. I like him.
But Errol, it's, about legacy. If the Terrence thing can't happen because whatever, and then you and Mel are like brothers. You're not going to fight for Undisputed 54. What's the next step to just make you a greater fighter? What do you think's the next legacy fight then for you, Errol?
I don't know, but I never say I ain't fighting nobody.
Okay, so.
Shit, I'll fight whoever.
Okay, so when Errol said that in the heat of the moment, again, because there was 28 of us on an escalator at once crowding the man, I didn't realize that he said, because people mentioned it after the fact, that he technically didn't shoot down fighting Jermell Charlo in that video. Because I asked him, I said, well, okay, if Crawford's not going to happen, what's the next real legacy fight? If it's not going to be Crawford and it's not going to be Jermell, because you guys are like brothers, you train together, and that's not going to be for Undisputed 54. And he winds up saying, hey, I never said I won't fight I'll fight anybody. I never said never about any of that. And at the moment it went over my head, but as I go back now and people mentioned it, maybe that means he would fight Jermell Charlo at 154, and maybe that's also what he meant by shit. If you can't fight me, you're not fighting Jermell. Maybe part of the subtext was because I would fight him before you would fight him. I would take my shot at the Undisputed titles at 54 before I let you do that if you're not going to fight me. So that interview took on a different tone after people pointed that out. So I got $5 earlier in the chat, and I almost missed it. I'm so sorry. Let me get back to it. Wilson, is Ruiz versus Wilder official? No. Not get back to it. Wilson, is Ruiz versus Wilder official? No, not at all. As a matter of fact, recent tweets came out that Wilder, there was talks of step-aside money for a potential, almost mystery big opponent. Some people could speculate that's Anthony Joshua, but Wilder Ruiz is the expected fight to be made, but isn't official by any means, Wilson. Thank you so much for the 5, man, and for jumping in the chat with us. Homeboy sent me $2 earlier. Thank you so much, Homeboy. Does Crawford go for Charlo or stays at 147? Homeboy, my whole opinion on Crawford and his next move for me that I think is best for for us, being selfish, thinking of us, the fans, is Ortiz. It's the Ortiz fight. Economically, I think that draws a pretty penny. There's a chance for Ortiz to really elevate himself and become a star with that performance. He would, if they were to fight in the West Coast, anywhere other than Omaha, he would draw a large Mexican and Mexican-American fan base, and he'd be the underdog. And if he could pull off an upset against one of the sport's best fighters, a guy who's one of the sport's best pound for pound, but is, on the getting close, in his mid 30s, I think 35, 36 years old, Terrence Crawford. So Crawford is getting up there in age, and is still the favorite against Virgil Ortiz. But if you're Virgil's team and this guy's great and he's still dangerous, but he is getting older, maybe you roll the dice. You roll the dice instead of playing the safe route, which is almost looks like their plan as of right now, the safe route. Wait until one of these guys move up and then become a world champion. Grab the vacant belt. But I would love it if Team Ortiz would roll the dice, if DAZN, who struggled to get big fights in America produced on their platform, maybe they have to overpay, so be it, so that we could see what we want. And I think Crawford should try to make a fight with Ortiz, and vice versa. I think the Ortiz fight should be ambitious and take a gigantic chance and see if their guy cash in their mandatory title shot. See if their guy can come up big against the guy who is aging. That's what I think. But just checking what else. The truck driving gamer, Thurman is going to catch him. Certainly possible. I think Thurman will catch Errol Spence with some bombs in the first half of the fight, because Errol has touched up every fighter he's ever fought. Even when he lost to Manny Pacquiao in the second half of that fight, he came on and landed a number of significant punches on Pacquiao. So Thurman's one of these guys that's never been shut down offensively. So you would expect him to get off and to land some significant shots against Spence. But if he can't drop him, hurt him badly early in the fight to make him a little more timid so he doesn't get that punch count rolling early on in the fight, it's going to get ugly for Keith in the second half of the fight. But first half of that fight, I expect fireworks from Keith Thurman. But I don't think it's going to be enough to either get Errol out of there or to knock him down multiple times. And I think he'll succumb in the second half. But Keith is still set some nice traps, especially with a guy who's going to come to him. But I just think the pace is just going to be too much for Keith Thurman as that fight progresses. Let's see. I wish Thurman had been more active the last few years, says Max Felix. Yeah, absolutely. No reason he shouldn't have got a fight in to finish 2022. He talked about it. He said he was going to do it. It didn't happen. You don't know how much of that is budget. He wants a certain amount of money guaranteed for every time he steps into the ring, and he couldn't get that. So he says, I'm not fighting until that number is produced. Okay, well, we could certainly produce that number against an opponent like Errol Spence. Okay, I'll fight again. I don't know. But Keith did himself no favors by being inactive heading into this Spence fight, just like Ryan Garcia pulling out of the Hesta fight has done himself no favors heading into a Tank fight. Bud versus Lara at 54, says Molly Mall. I mean, Lara's a 160-pounder now, so, and Bud isn't doing any, if he's not going to successfully make a fight with Spence, I don't think he's going to successfully make a fight with anybody on the PBC side, which is why I'm saying for the time being, go to the zone. Hopefully they still have a big budget, secure a big guarantee against Virgil Ortiz. That's a hell of a fight. Let's go that route. David Jackson, thank you so much, man. To some, it appeared that Keith was ducking Errol at 147. How does fighting at 154 for nothing make sense? Must be a retirement check. Oof. Well, the things about a guy like Keith, and of course I like Keith. He's a really cool dude, and at one point was the most gifted fighter in the division in terms of athleticism. But it's those whispers of the guys fighting for the check are easier to come out when he says he wanted to be active, but perhaps he didn't, or not perhaps, but maybe he didn't get in the ring because a certain number of money wasn't met, a certain check wasn't met. But if you're about getting back to the top, surely sometimes you got to sacrifice the short-term money to get to accomplish the real goals in the long term. And if he would have done that and gotten 2 or 3 fights in this past year, he'd have a better chance heading into Spence. But instead, he's heading in with one fight in what would be the last 14 or 15 months heading into that fight against Barrios. So it is what it is, man. But that said, Keith still very good at punching around, sweeping his punches around the guard, finishing with the uppercut. He knows how to punch. So if Spence is going to come with the fundamentally sound, the high guard, and Keith knows how to punch around that and punch up the center of it with the uppercut, he can catch him with some big shots, but he hasn't shown the concussive one-punch knockout power in years, and so I think he'll hit Errol. He may even make Errol, like in the Ugas fight, do a funny dance once or twice, but I think after rounds 5, 6, 7, Errol's going to be in control of that fight. Michael Robertson, shout out Michael Robertson. Thank you, brother, for the $1. Appreciate you, man, for being in the chat. Bugsta says, yo, why did Tank diss FightHype? Have to go talk to Javante about it. So it's unfortunate, man. Spence stops Bud easy. I don't think so, Mundo. I don't think either one stops the other easy, but I'm past it, man. Look, okay. Crawford and Spence and Crawford, they're like they're like that, I guess that fine girl in high school that a guy will try to just get her attention. He's in awe of her, and he's been watching her all freshman and sophomore year, just hoping that he gets a strike. Hope she looks his way. Hopes he, please, Spence Crawford, look our way. As boxing fans, we love you. You're so banging. We want you to look at us. And at some point, man, you gotta just let her go, and you gotta just move on with your life and stop paying attention to her. And maybe, who knows? Once you do that, she'll come back. She'll come your way. The moment you're stop being so infatuated, then she'll come around our way, or you just move on, because Crawford Spence has proved to be a flake like corn, and I was born not to understand. By letting her pass, I proved to be a better man. So, yeah, Crawford Spence keeps on passing me by, and we got to just let her go. I don't know how much of you guys knew the reference, The Far Side. It didn't come out as clean as I wanted it to, but that was my metaphor for Crawford Spence. It's like the song She Keeps Passing Me By. And the message at the end of the song was, you're better off just letting her pass her by if she's bullshitting. And Crawford Spence is bullshitting right now. So, all right, y'all want to make, Thurman Spence. All right, fuck it. Here's our breakdown of Thurman Spence. 7 out of 10 excitement. It's not a terrible fight. At least they didn't make Stan Jonas, and it's a lot better than Crawford Avanesian in comparison to that. Terrence, go fight Virgil Ortiz. Go make that sexy fight over there. And then when you guys are done, fight or don't. We got to move on with life at some point, man. We got to let her pass. Yeah, Far Side. Right. So analogy, right. Bugsta, it was an analogy. Thank you. Iron Man, thank you, brother, for the $2. Appreciate you. I'm happy that Far Side reference went over well. I didn't know if the flow was so choppy and I delivered it so awkwardly that it didn't work, but thank you. Kev C, Sean, do FightHype do business with PBC? Kev C, no. No, I can answer that with an official no. That's really not my place. I'm not the founder of the site. But to answer I won't expand on it, but to answer your question, honestly, no. No, there is no exchange of money or revenue between the PBC and FightHype. I do know that. So certainly, not for myself. I did write some freelance articles. The man who helps run that site over there, Kenny Buhari, who I have a lot of respect for, he was kind enough to give me an opportunity writing some articles. I wrote a really good article, in my opinion, I'm biased, on Lamont Peterson. Got some great quotes from Barry Hunter. It was supposed to be Lamont Peterson's last fight against Sergey Lipin. Yes, he wound up fighting over the weekend. But that's as far as my taking money from promoters go. I wrote a few freelance articles, 2018, 2019, 2020. So that's it. Just to be transparent with you guys, the people. It can be hard to be objective in this sport when all the major entities are trying to pull you in each direction, but not selling out, baby. We want to keep it fair and keep it true here. So appreciate the questions though, and I understand you asking them. Okay, Renee Box Young. Yeah, man, Spence versus Thurman is nice. I think Spence whips Thurman's butt, but fun fight, man, and interesting. Yeah, fun fight, right? I think I agree. I think Spence wins. I think most boxing fans are going to be picking, and analysts, experts, trainers are going to be picking Errol to win this fight. But there's some bad blood there. Thurman is still a savvy guy, a guy with power, and still isn't as athletic as he used to be. But compared to other fighters, is still athletic, still fast. And Keith's going to sell a fight. That is one thing Keith will do better than Terrence against Errol, is sell a fight. He will talk it up. He will sell it. And some of the press conferences should be some fun. There's bad blood there. I think Keith's talk is going to get on Errol's nerves, grate on him. Maybe Keith should use that to advantage, get him to walk forward a little more recklessly. But we all wanted Spence Crawford. I will say this, and I didn't sell any of my Jerron Boots Ennis stock. I still think that's a bad man, and I would love to see him get a shot against the best. Showed he's got some things to work on after that fight with Karan Chukashan. But his performance being, kind of pedestrian against Chukashan, in a way, makes it easier to get excited for Spence and Thurman, because it's like, okay, Crawford's just not happening. And to me, still, Ennis is the best option for Spence as a fan, if it's not going to be Crawford. But Ennis came back down to earth with that last performance, and so it's like, okay, makes it a little easier to get into Thurman then for the time being. So, Michael Robertson, talk boxing on all levels. Crawford versus Ortiz in Vegas, says House Veleron, or Texas. I might like Crawford or Ortiz in Texas, but probably Vegas feels more like neutral ground. Texas is going to feel like a road game for Crawford against Virgil, because it would be. Chosen 2, what'd you ask? So if Tank and Ryan are happening 4/15/23 or so, does that mean EJ Keith will be at the end of the month? Chosen two. I would imagine they're not going to fight in the same month. I imagine one of those two are going to get moved off that date. Maybe Ryan and Tank. Maybe Ryan and Tank get moved to. Well, it depends. Ryan and Tank would actually work great for Cinco de Mayo, but Canelo. That's Canelo's territory. That's his date. But if there's any way they could move Canelo off that date, Ryan and Tank would make the most sense for Cinco de Mayo. But if not that, then maybe it gets moved to June. That's really all speculation. Chosen two. I wish I could clear that up better. Let's see. Aldis, Belgium. Spence versus Thurman is another great fight that Spence will prove he's the best. At least he ain't fighting David Avanesian. Crawford fights straight bums. Okay. Yeah, but it still sucks that they're not. Whatever. Fight. Luis Reyes, Sean. Ortiz got to beat Stanionis first. I hear you, Luis, and I do think he was going to beat Stanionis, but that's a good fight. I do think he was going to beat Stanionis, but now you see his manager, Rick Murigan, saying that they're not going to wait until April for a delay to the fight, that they're going to move ahead maybe with another opponent. Nothing's official there yet, but I don't know if Ortiz Stanionis is in limbo or not. I don't know if that fight is still officially going to happen. So, yeah, but I do think that he should go ahead with that Stanionis fight, but after that, let's see the Crawford fight. Tommy Tom, Tank versus Ryan is a bigger fight than Errol and Thurman. I definitely agree with that. Bro, fix the microphone. Here, let me lower it a little bit for you. Is that better? Is that a little bit better? There we go. Should be a little better. Tank and Ryan would be fight of the year. Smells like OTR. You're paid to hate on Bud. That's factually incorrect. OTR. I think Bud would. I always pick Bud to beat. Spence, but Bud is approaching 36. The first thing to go are his legs are slowing down a little bit. He's still the best in the game at punching in between punches. If you open up an exchange with him, he knows how to punctuate the exchange, counter punch, get off in between your shots, and pinpoint you with power. And that's still what makes Crawford deadly. I still would give him a slight edge over Spence, but I'm not as confident as he continues to age as I was two years ago, a year ago, 3 years ago. So I'm not paid to hate on Bud. If anything, if him and Errol fight, I still would give him the edge. But it's just the edge, and that edge lessens as time goes on, because Father Time waits on nobody. But for Crawford, in the meantime, since him and Spence clearly isn't going to happen, the best fight in the division at that point is him and Ortiz, and I think there's a path to that fight realistically being made, because the Zone struggles to get marquee talent in America to put on cards. So, they might be in a position to overpay and give a big fat guarantee for that fight and make that fight possible. That's what I'm hoping shakes out for Crawford, since the Spence fight hasn't come off. Let's see. Tank versus Stevenson is what we need. That would be a great fight at some point. Bugsta 2012. Sean, do you think Spence will go back down to 47? It's a tough question. I'm actually tempted. My first gut reaction is no, because he's talked about how tough it is to get down to 47. He does boil down to 47 a little bit. He's probably going to feel very comfortable at 54, and that, looking back at that clip when I asked him about Charlo, makes me pause and go, okay, maybe he would fight Charlo after all. And he's talked about wanting to be undisputed. Fighting Charlo still gives him a chance to be undisputed, just not the undisputed fight we thought all along. That would be a shocker that we wound up getting Errol and Jermell for undisputed, not Terrence and Errol. But I'm not ruling out him going back to 47, because outside of Jermell, the more lucrative options are at 47. Ortiz, Ennis, Terrence. But physically, I don't know if that guy's going to want to take those 7 pounds back off after kind of comfortably getting in at 54. I would lean towards this as it is. We've seen the last welterweight fight for Spence. I would lean towards it. Not. I wouldn't bet on it. Does the IBF 120-day countdown start fighting at 154? I gotta remember what you mean by that. Can you clarify, B Black? Forgive me, brother. Is this Biff, by the way? My man Biff is that B Black? There's some rule you're asking me about that's going over my head at the moment. So, my bad, chat. Michael Robertson, clearly you have an agenda. What agenda would that be? Oh. Why try to give you a play and you do this crap? I asked for a prediction between Wilder and Ruiz. Oh, Wilder Ruiz. I would give it to Wilder. It's just that's a lot of length and punching power to overcome for Ruiz, who's going to have to cut the distance to land his shots. He's got to come forward. I mean, Ruiz boxed well on the outside against Luis Ortiz, but against the length like Wilder, he's inevitably got to get in range, and I just think Wilder could line him up at some point with a right hand. IBF mandatory countdown. All that was reported, B Black, was that Biff. Yeah, it is you. What's up, Biff? No, all that was reported again in the tweet was that looks like I go back to it. That Spence will have a 60 days to close a deal for a long so the mandatory countdown looks like it'll be 60 days. But it didn't specify which sanctioning body that is, or if it's all of them, or so I wish I could answer that a little bit better for you, Biff, but it remains to be seen. Sometimes they make it up as they go along. I think these sanctioning bodies kind of coordinate with the promoters anyways. They don't just rule alone, independent, make their own rulings. That's just me, though. I know this is off topic, but WWE just sold the company, said Bam Scott. Damn, well, hey, they peaked a long time ago, man. Like, WWE, when it was, WWF was the shit, and they've been living off the remnants of former glory for a while, and I know they still have fans to this day, but I think most objective people would say WWF went down the drain 15, 20 years ago. So, hey, they had a good run, the McMahon family. They did their thing. It's harder to get wrestling over in today's age where it's long been known it's fake. And anyways, but that's crazy. They sold WWF. That's crazy. I still want to call it WWF. L-Dub Boxing, what's good, Sean? Congrats on the BWAA membership. Thank you, brother. Thank you, L-Dub Boxing. Appreciate that. Yeah, quickly, I actually became today the first video journalist in the sport to be admitted into the Boxing Writers Association of America. So it was an awesome day. But it's hopefully this opens more doors for my colleagues here on YouTube that do so much great work on all the various channels here, and I think that's exactly what's going to happen. It's going to open the door for more of those guys, and so I kind of take this as a responsibility now to carry myself well for boxing and to help the sport out, move in a good direction, and set a good example for the younger guys coming up, and just reflect good for my colleagues, so makes it easier for everyone else to get in at some point. But thank you, L-Dub. Appreciate you, man. Bam, Scott, you will see me on there, brother. Don't worry. You'll see me on there sometimes. No doubt about that. Dr. Ruben, thank you, brother. Metal Hendricks, thank you, man. Thank you, guys. Stiff jabs. Between now and 60 days after Spence Thurman, I can see the Bud fight being made for Undisputed. We all need to demand that fight instead of taking shots at the fighters. We are how they get paid, to be honest, right? And you know what, Stiff Jabs, I think you're fair. I think, you know what, Stiff Jabs, here's where I'm at with you. Thurman Spence wasn't the fight everyone asked for, but it's a good enough fight that I can get up for it, get excited for it. I'll be looking forward to getting to my seat that night and watching those two duke it out. So we'll enjoy Thurman Spence for what it is. You guys can say what you want about it, love it or criticize, up to you guys. I'll be enjoying the fight. And after that, we will give Crawford Spence one more shot. And if they don't come to the table for all of our sake, let's just move the fuck on. And yeah, because either they're going to fight or they're not. So we will all come to the table. We'll try to bring it together And if they don't fight, they don't fight, man. It's if we can't want it for them more than them, right? I mean, we can't want the fight more than the fighters. If they don't want it that bad, if they're content with the fight never happening, then I'm content with it too. But I do hope it happens. Wilson said I'm already there. And the sad part is, sometimes the big fight, De La Hoya Mayweather was a solid chess match, but it didn't live up to being, an all-time great boxing classic. De La Hoya Trinidad, sometimes those fights don't pan out quite like people hoped, but Crawford Spence stylistically, especially with Crawford's legs slowing down, meaning, he's exchanging more than ever. That fight stylistically would probably live up to the hype. It would probably have tons of action and tons of great rounds. So again, it sucks if it doesn't happen. Even if you say that fight should have happened 2 or 3 years ago, stylistically right now, it still makes for an action fight fought at the highest level. So, hopefully it happens, man. But, we'll be all right if it doesn't. Hopefully the young guys watching who are looking up to Errol and Terrence will say, I don't want that to happen when it comes time for my big fight. I'll try, I'll just do what, so hopefully that's what it does. S1 Dub said the fight is dead, not going to happen, let it go. Wilson said it's one of the biggest L's in sports history. Damn. Sometimes, though, because people have been saying for a decade now that the marination era has just gone too far. It's jumped the shark. Well, maybe this could be a bottoming out moment, a moment of clarity. Like, wow, we really have let this escalate too far. Crawford and Spence, they never fought. It just never happened. And maybe that could be a little bit of like a wake-up call to the business. But I'm not sure that's the case. That's not how they look at it. So we'll see. Very true, Universal Energy. Crawford and Spence is nowhere near May and Pac. Totally different fighters. Yeah, they and that's what a lot of people in the business will tell you is a big reason this fight isn't happening is because of unrealistic expectations versus the reality of what it would draw financially. We just know it would be a great fight, so we want to see it, but that stuff matters, man. Guys got to agree to the money that they actually would earn and all that. It's not the fun part. Let's see. Bugsta 2012, AJ versus Wilder never happened. Well, it never did. And that fight had a lot more money on the table than Terrence and Errol did. But I think AJ and Wilder still might happen at some point, actually. The way Wilder talks, the way Wilder and Malik Scott talk, like they feel that's a legacy definer. That's a signature fight before they call it quits. So maybe that fight does still happen. But certainly the business seems to want the Ruiz fight to happen first. But I wouldn't count Wilder and Joshua being done just yet. Could still happen. It wouldn't mean as much as it would have if they fought for the Undisputed Heavyweight Championship. But someone's still getting knocked out in that fight. It'll still be a fun fight. Lennox versus Bo never happened. Right. Crawford already a Hall of Famer. Probably, yeah. But partly because it's a little bit of a watered-down era compared to, when some of the guys behind me were fighting. But most of them are pretty recent. Salvador Sanchez is right there. Bernard Hopkins, even Pacquiao Cotto, who are recent, but they're, fighters don't fight as often. Big fights don't get made as often. So the bar has to come down. You have to judge guys according to their era. So Crawford is a Hall of Famer in this era, no question about it. But, and he gets in because he's undisputed super lightweight champ. He's the only undisputed super lightweight champ. He's a 3-division champ. But the wins themselves, people could nitpick a little bit. Like, it's not a resume like an Oscar De La Hoya. And then, same thing with like a Jermell Charlo. But being undisputed makes up for that. Even with Haney right now, some people would go, yeah, but who do you really beat? Is Kambosos all that? But sometimes the fact that you beat them for all 4 belts or for unified, that's an equalizer. It makes up for the fact that maybe the guy wasn't the strongest champion or the most highly touted champion, but he was the champion. And that counts for a lot. So let's see. But yeah, I do think Crawford in today's era is a Hall of Famer. But I really think, honestly, to be an all-time great, Crawford and Spence needed each other for either one. I think Crawford with the multiple divisions, maybe I think that gives him a slight edge against Errol, accomplishments-wise, head-to-head. But Errol actually has the stronger victories over, better competition. But Terrence having all the belts in the collection in 3 divisions, being undisputed at 140, that gives him a little bit of a nod head-to-head and accomplishments-wise. So, but truth be told, they needed each other to actually be a truly great fighter. So we'll see. But if Errol can fight Jermell Charlo and beat him, that would make him an all-time great. If Terrence could take on Virgil Ortiz and beat up, Boots Ennis and beat that would go a long way to solidifying him as truly great, and not just great in this era. Tip Bayless, one time is back, 7 years in the making. Damn. 7 years this fight is almost 7 years in the making, because what was it, 2016? You're right, when Spence first started calling out Keith Thurman. Actually, man, I have an old interview. This was with the Boxing Voice, where I interviewed Errol at the MGM right after Keith went 12 rounds with Leonard Bundu, and the crowd booed Leonard Bundu because Keith dropped him in the first round, and then kind of bizarrely got on his bike the rest of the fight, and the crowd booed him. And Errol Spence said that night, "I'll body Keith Thurman," and I think that was 2016 or 15. So this fight is 7 or 8 years in the making. The press conferences will be good. So, I think I hear my son calling me in the back. He might come up here in a minute. Bud Scared says, "Hi, haters." I don't think Bud's scared or Spence is scared. I think it's business stuff, man. It's business stuff. I don't think Terrence Crawford and Al Heyman particularly get along. So many. I've talked about it on previous streams. It's a can of worms. Check out one of my previous Z-Caps. Kinahan, PBC, Crawford, or that whole ball of yarn. We just want to see some great fights, but yeah. Anyway, Thurman versus Maidana, HBO debut. Who would have won? Oof, Maidana, because Thurman, he went life or death with Diego Chavez at that time, if you recall. Even Santa Jose, what was that? Jose Armando Jesus Soto Caras gave him some scary moments. I think Maidana would have taken the moments they did and made them much scarier. And I think Maidana at that time would have won that fight. When you go back and look at how life and death he went with Diego Chavez around that time. Raja Cardio, what makes you think Bud even wants big fights? He didn't want to fight Sean until he was mandated. Spence wouldn't entertain David Avanesian or today's Brooke or Khan. It's good. It's a fair question. I'm not sure he really cares anymore about making big fights. I think he just cares about the check being guaranteed, but I don't think he's anti-big fights. You know what I mean? I just think if you're going to give him $10 million for a David Avanesian, he's going to take that and do it and not feel bad about not fighting the tough fight for $1 or $2 million more. I don't have any explanation for that, but I don't think that Crawford would duck a big fight. I don't think he doesn't, is anti-fighting a big fight at all either. I just think there's some animosity there going on between him and the PBC side. Possibly he has, behind the scenes, maybe he still has his advisor Kinahan, and Kinahan and Heyman would never work together under any circumstances, and might have to do all with that. But I do appreciate your question. I do think. Oh, thank you, babe. Thank you. Love you. No. I just think being the multiple division, modern day great fighter that he is, or like I said, for today's era, great fighter that he is, that he it's not that he's afraid to fight Errol Spence, you mentioned didn't want to fight Sean until mandated, and then he goes on to be the first one to stop Sean Porter. So, clearly it didn't fear Sean Porter, but I understand, and I've talked to people in the business who brought that up too. And when you talk to Terrence Crawford and you ask him, "Do you need this fight?" He goes, "No, I don't need it. My legacy's already sealed." And that's kind of weak. As a fan, you don't want to hear that. You want to hear a guy who wants to prove himself that he is as great as some people have said. As he said, "I'm the best fighter in the world." Well, will prove it. Don't you want to prove it and fight Errol Spence? You saying the opposite of that you could care less, isn't a good look. Just like it wasn't a good look that, Spence was happy to say, "Nah, for 2019, nah, for 2020, I'm doing my thing. I'm fighting good fighters, grabbing other belts, and you could wait over there like a good guy." Well, that ultimate in Spence, I understand your business plan, and you made good on you unified, you won those fights, and deserve credit for doing that. But that meant you were culpable in that fight also not happening in all those years' time. So you don't get off scot-free for the fight not happening either, and neither does Terrence. So it's not a good look for either one of them, in my opinion. But it is what it is. Both still, really like seeing them fight. But appreciate your question. Let's see. Smells like OTR said Spence is playing games. He never planned on fighting Bud. The heavyweight division is what's keeping boxing alive, says Junior One. It's not like the heavy, outside of Fury and Wilder, those three fights, not like the heavyweight division's been doing so much in America outside of those three fights with Wilder and Fury. They're making noise. We got Jared Anderson coming up, but Sean, you missed 2 super chat. I did? Where did I miss him at? Hold on. No, I got to him. Yeah, I got to him all, brother. Appreciate you checking with it, though. MD Mills, this fight is trash. 135 is keeping boxing afloat. 135 should be the best division in boxing. Just got to get the fights going. Raja Cardio declined Bob's offer for Pacquiao, so it can't be Al. Raja, again, appreciate the $2, my man. You're gonna provide us a link, and you don't got to do it with a super chat. If you want to, go ahead, but can you provide a link for that? Because that's not what I was told from people at Top Rank at the time when it went down. What I was told from people at Top Rank when it went down, Crawford versus Pacquiao, was that after Crawford fought Victor Postal, Freddie Roach saw that fight. Not Manny. Freddie saw that fight, and in that fight, Crawford used his legs a lot. And he said, "You know what? I feel like at Manny's age, that guy was moving around too much, and I don't want Manny to have to go and get him at this age and have to take..." He didn't like that style, what Crawford brought to the table after watching the Postal fight. So Top Rank was told for Manny to do that Crawford fight, he was going to need a guarantee in excess of $20 million, which Top Rank didn't want to produce for that fight, in addition to being told that Freddie didn't really like the fight anyways, stylistically, for Manny. So that's what I was told. Now, Crawford did himself zero favors in securing the Pacquiao fight because he refused to do interviews about it. Especially when you're a guy whose name isn't that known, you gotta beat down the door. You gotta do a little bit of the Mr. T going after Rocky Balboa in the beginning of Rocky 3, your own version of it. You don't have to be vulgar, but you have to do what Erislandy Lara did to Canelo Alvarez. You gotta get the guy to take the fight. And Crawford, he did one interview with Sway in the morning, and that was about it. That was it. And I think Sway asked him about the Pacquiao fight, and he did the same thing he's done in reference to the Spence fight. I don't need that fight. Of course I want that fight. Of course I'll win that fight, but I don't need that fight. But yeah, Cardio, that was not what I was told. I never heard he declined any offer for Pacquiao. I heard, if anything, it was the Pacquiao team who wasn't interested in going through with a Crawford fight. But Crawford did himself no favors by not beating the drum to get that legend in the ring with him. So, yeah. Stiff jabs. Manny wanted $20 million plus to fight Bud. That's cap. Stiff jabs. I'm just telling you what people that work at Top Rank told me at the time. I'm not saying it's true or not. I'm not saying that that's gospel. Just telling you what I was told. So Taekwon Savage. Bomac said he told Bud not to sign. It's on video. Taekwon, can you share a link? Not saying it's not true. Just share a link. This news to me. Oh, okay. So he said it's possible that Bomac was just talking, but he said they offered them not enough for Pac-Man. Damn. I would have to. I'm not definitely not calling you a liar. I just would want to see it. I don't recall it, but if that's the case, not a good look. Not a good look. Fender Bender says, Sean, my wife is giving you hell right now. She ain't never seen you before because she works in 9-to-5 job every day. She has no idea the knowledge you have on boxing. So she if you have 2 seconds, say, Leah Gale, straighten your shit up. Nah, Leah, thank you, Leah, for watching the chat, for watching tonight. I don't want to get in trouble by telling you that. But Fender Bender said, straighten your shit up, Leah Gale. He said it, not me. So shout out to you, man. Thank you, Fender Bender. Sean, I'm a longtime fan. Love you guys before the podcast. Tell my girlfriend that Wilder has no fucking chance of beating Fury. Come on now. Now, Fender Bender, I'm going to get you mad at me. But Fender Bender, knockdown number 2 in round 4 of Fury Wilder 3. Was it longer than 10 seconds? Now, Fury wins. He wins the trilogy. He wins the best heavyweight fight of the new millennium alongside Lewis and Klitschko. Fury did that. He won. But just an honest question. Was knockdown number 2 in round 4 of Fury Wilder 3, was it 10 seconds or was it a little longer? Because live in the arena, I said to myself, I guess that's it. I guess he just got counted out. And then when the ref let him up, I said, ooh, that felt kind of closer to 13, 14 seconds. But still, Fury did that. Undercard, thank you, brother. Appreciate you, man. No, it was a long count. It was a 9 count. Tank whoops Ryan, says Mr. P. I do have Tank winning that fight, but Ryan's got a real shot. He's got a real shot. But I got Tank. Tank is getting too experienced. He's seen too many different styles and too many title fights. And Ryan is behind the 8 ball in terms of seeing all those styles and learning. So Serrano Concept. Shout out to Serrano Concept. Thank you for jumping in the chat. Quick question. What are your thoughts on Misfit Boxing promotions with all the influencers on DAZN? MD Mills, I'll get to Crawford, Alexis Roca. Spoiler, Crawford all day. But Serrano Concept. My thoughts on the influencers in boxing is it's more of a societal thing, like with Jake Paul. I kind of liken it to the rise of reality television, and it's it reflects poorly on society and society's tastes and interests that this stuff has an avenue to be consumed more and to be more interested in than legitimate sport and legitimate title fights and things like that. So the old phrase, don't hate the player, hate the game. And that's a little bit of how I approach Jake Paul and the influences. I can't get mad at them. They get in the gym, they work hard, most of them, and they get better at the sport, and they hustle to make some money, and they don't put a gun to anybody's head to show up to their fight. But I do hate the game a little bit. It is a little bit like, really, people, why do you care? Why do you care? He's, what? So that's a little bit of my angle with it. I would never blame these guys for putting gloves on, training in the gym hard, getting better at fighting, having the courage to get in a boxing ring and fight. And they didn't put a gun to anybody's head to watch them and pay attention to them. But it is just a little. I think it. I'm on my soapbox. I think it reflects poorly on society a little bit. I think it's all connected. I think that's part of why the media in general were a little bit more dumbed down. There is no more The Godfather Part 2. Everything's a stupid fucking Marvel movie. And so it's all kind of connected in a deeper sense. That's kind of my answer on it. And boxing shooting itself in the foot, not putting its best product out possible consistently, opens the door for these guys to come in and make a side hustle going on in the sport. So if the schedule was filled with top fights month after month, there wouldn't be as much room. It's wide open right now for them to come in and do what they're doing. If it was like the old days and we had Tito Trinidad and Fernando Vargas and Shane Mosley and Oscar De La Hoya and Roy Jones and Eric Morales and Marco Antonio Barrera and Floyd Mayweather fighting back to back every 2 weeks apart, man, who gives a fuck what these influencers are doing? So it reflects a little poorly on the state of boxing, just keeping it real. And it reflects a little poorly on the tastes of people, that consume media. It's like, why do you care about this shit? And it reflects poorly even on people like me, because if I can make a quick buck doing a round by round on some bullshit ass influencer fight, I'm gonna do it. So that sometimes I'm gonna do it, sometimes I'm not. But so that reflects poorly on me too. I'm a part of the hypocrisy as well sometimes. How about Crawford versus Alexis Roca? Crawford all day levels to this. Roca is a good fighter, but if you can't beat Rashidi Ellis and he beats you handily, you ain't gonna beat Terrence Crawford. But Roca's a good fighter. He's a guy you need. You need. Not everybody going to be a superstar. You need top guys that can really fight, real pros. And Alexis Roca is a real pro. And you need guys like him in the welterweight division. Boxing Pedigree, $2. Thank you, brother, so much. Appreciate you, man. Shout out Boxing Pedigree. MD Mills again with the 5. Thank you, man. Appreciate it. Do you think Crawford is being deliberately frozen out of fighting big names from other promotional companies? I think that Crawford was a free agent some years ago, and he had the choice to sign with PBC or Bob Arum. And I guess he took what he felt was security, the guaranteed $3.5 to $4 million paydays on the most established network and sporting network in the world, ESPN, with Bob Arum, who's the most proven promoter. So, maybe he took what he felt was the safe side, the safe deal, the sure thing. But he had to have known at the time, and if he didn't, it was naive of him not to know that if you don't sign with the PBC, you're not going to fight the best fighters in the division. It's just not going to happen. And just like in all likelihood, if Bob Arum had the best welterweights in the division and you were to sign with Al Heyman, it's not going to happen. So it's not me really singling out Al or the PBC. Bob Arum would do the same thing. Eddie Hearn would do the same thing. This is what they do. And so, he was frozen out. Like it's hard to build up it's hard to build up Crawford Spence when Crawford can't fight when he doesn't have access to the other welterweights in the division to build his name and build his ledger at welterweight to make Spence Crawford a super fight at welterweight. Well, historically, if Trinidad and Oscar aren't just going to fight, if they're going to build it up, then they both get to fight together, the best fighters at welterweight. But that was off the table for Crawford once he made the decision to re-up with Bob, and that's his right. I believe in my heart it shouldn't come down to which promoter you're with, whether you're with Bob, Eddie, or Al. Once you're 1 and number 2 in the division, that shit should happen. That's when it needs to be a sport. Fuck the business. It needs to be a sport. And I know that's easy for me to say because my dollars aren't invested in putting these fights on. I just get to sit here and watch them. But that's how I feel. But despite me feeling like that, that's not a reality of the business. So yeah, he got frozen out, but he had to have known that when he made his choice not to sign with PBC. Do with that what you will. Thank you, MD Mills. Black Ray Donovan said he's only here to thank Al Heyman. And Black Ray Donovan, you did just that. I made sure of it. Serrano Concept, great answer. Oh, thank you, Serrano Concept. Thank you. Thank you for jumping in the chat. I believe that really is Coach, right? Is that Coach Serrano? Or is that Champ? Which Serrano is in the chat? I'm just hyped that you're here. Or you're just a Serrano fan. Just a Cindy and Amanda Serrano fan. What else, folks? Sean, what's your thoughts on... Oh, thank you, MD Mills. I'm happy you were cool with the answer. Appreciate the question, man. And cardio, Spence was fighting all of them, so the PBC didn't rob us. They just let their fighter fight them first and still let Bud fight Sean after. Cardio, I don't know if PBC was that crazy about Sean. That was kind of Sean. Like you mentioned earlier, it's not like Terrence was dying to fight Sean, and it's not like PBC was dying to send Sean over to Terrence. That was kind of Sean being Sean and taking matters into his own hand. And I really want this Crawford fight, and I'm gonna do it. That was Sean being a true champion, and that's something, that's my friend. That's something I admire about the man, and I love about the man, is that he made that happen, and really. Terrence wasn't dying for that to happen, and PBC wasn't dying for that to happen. So that was Sean taking matters into his own hands like a G. Corey Lee Boxing, thank you, man. Black Ray Donovan, I got you, man. I had to get you. I had to get it out there for you. I got you. Sean, what's your thoughts on Ortiz Stanionis from Edmund Rubio? Thank you, Edmundo Rubio. I got Ortiz. I think two bulls coming right at each other. But I think Ortiz is a little bit more of the thoroughbred. He's a little bit more of the puncher. Stanionis can punch too. Strong as a bull. They're both strong as hell. But Ortiz has seen this style before at this level. He fought his countryman, Kaviaskis. I think they're both from Lativa. Somewhere nearby there. Eastern. But I think they're both from Lativa. But Stanionis and him, or Lithuania. Was it Lithuania or was it Lativa? I think it might have been Lithuania, but so I know they're from the same country. So Ortiz got a taste of that style with Mean Machine Kaviaskis, Adidjas Kaviaskis. So that's a point in his favor, and I just think he's better. I think it's two come forward guys, but Virgil has the better jab. Oh, so important in any fight. But between two come forward bulls, he's got the better jab. He'll out jab Stanionis, and that allows him to get off first and to dictate. And so I think he's a little bit bigger puncher than Stanionis. I think as strong as Stanionis is, I believe Virgil's a little taller than him. So Virgil will be a little bit bigger puncher, a little bit bigger guy, better jab, has seen this style before. I got Ortiz in that fight, and I got Ortiz by stoppage. I think you run right into him, it's running into a buzzsaw. I think it's going to be a really fun fight if it still happens. Rick Mirrigan, Ortiz's manager, said with Stanionis' recent injury that that fight might not happen because they're not sitting around waiting for a delayed date. That's unfortunate, but I think that fight should happen. I got Ortiz, hands down. I got Ortiz. Gallon 559, a super jab, yeah, and he doubles it up. Virgil Ortiz doubles up that jab. Ghost 304, Kermel Morton. How long before pro? Not too long, but the real beat guy on Kermel Morton is my guy Ron Goodall. I've seen Kermel in the gym. I double take that him. I'm like, is this Gervonta Davis's little brother? They look so alike. Sweetheart of a kid. When I've met him at Floyd's gym out here in Vegas, Kermel Morton, great kid, great future. Has won a bajillion national titles in the amateurs. Everybody in the gym speaks highly about him. We got videos of him here on the site. My guy Ron Goodall, who also lives out here in Vegas, has covered him, put a lot of faith into him. So I think Kermel Morton, looks to be the goods. So he's definitely someone in America we're keeping our eye on, Kermel Morton. That Butayev fight was close from ringside. It was. The Butayev fight with Stanionis. It was. And Butayev hurt him to the body a couple times, I believe, in that fight. That fight was a close fight. So they do look so much alike in style. But I got Ortiz. How do you feel about Ortiz if he was in Boots' place? Do you think he would have finished the guy or same result? Fender Bender, I do think Virgil would have stopped Jukajan, but styles make fights. I think, styles make fights, and I think Spence, Ortiz, they would have got Jukajan out of there because unlike Ron Ennis, they know how to cut the ring off. That comes natural to them. They cut the ring. They're both from Texas. They know how to cut that ring off on that front foot behind the jab. double it up if you need to as you walk forward to get in range, to set up the combinations to the body and to the head. Yeah, I think Ortiz would have got out of there. That doesn't mean Ortiz beats Boots head-to-head. I still favor Boots head-to-head. Styles do make fights. But, yeah, I do think Ortiz would have looked definitely more impressive with Yukajan than Boots did. But Styles make fights. 17-time national champion at a young age, Carmel Morton. Yeah, that's crazy. So, guys, keep a lookout for Carmel Morton. No doubt about it. No one is stopping Karan. I don't know, man. I don't think so. I think Spence or Ortiz would have stopped Karan. I think they'd have cut that ring off and gotten to him. Karan never fought like that ever, said Undercard. I believe it. He felt that power, knew what he was up against, and fought like a guy who wanted to survive. He didn't. He kind of fought like Murad Hakar did against Bernard Hopkins. Who do you have winning? Shakur Stevenson versus Tank Davis. That's a true 50-50 fight. I think Shakur is more active than Tank. He's a more consistent fighter. He's a more disciplined fighter because of that. But Tank is more talented than Shakur. Tank has hand speed just like Shakur has hand speed. He has athleticism and reflexes just like Shakur has. Shakur is maybe the most fundamentally sound guy in 135 in terms of fundamentals. But Gervonta's more dynamic. He's a more explosive fighter, and he's just more explosive than Shakur. And that doesn't just mean power. That's a mixture of power and speed. He's more explosive than Shakur. I think he has a better resume than Shakur right now, but Shakur is more disciplined, more consistent 3 minutes of every round, better jab than Gervonta. So both guys got some real. And they're about the same size. Devin Haney's bigger than both of them. Devin Haney's going to get to welterweight one day, but Tank and Shakur are the same size. So that's a 50-50 fight. That's a 50-50 fight. But I do think Gervonta is the more gifted guy between the two of them. It's just Shakur has got those perfectly sound fundamentals, better jab. So, but that's a 50-50 fight. Undercard said you need to go live more. I would love to go live more. You got it. Cardio said that's not a knock on Boots. He'll learn to chase guys in a straight line. Yeah, you could always learn how to cut off the ring. Things like cutting off the ring you can learn, but the stuff that jumps out about Boots is a lot of stuff you can't learn. It's gifts. So let's see. What about Devin versus Tank? I give the edge to Devin because Devin is a big guy. Devin is starting to rehydrate over 150 pounds these days. He's what, 5'9"? Tank's 5'5". Devin's gonna be. He's got the frame to be a real welterweight one day. Got the jab to dictate, keep it active, keep it long, keep him on the outside, not let him step in range with the power. I think Devin would win a decision. In part because he's a bigger guy. Tank and Shakur are more the same size. Stylistically, what would I say is the best matchup at 135? I think stylistically, in terms of producing a fun fight for the fans, for the casual fan ordering a pay-per-view, it is Ryan and Tank. That fight's going to end in a knockout. I think Tank, but there's a chance Ryan knocks him out too. I don't think it goes the distance. I think you get a tense fight with a lot of rounds where there's not a lot of punches thrown, but every single punch that is thrown, it's like edge of your seat because both guys have one-punch knockout power. So I think Tank and Ryan will end in a knockout. I don't know if you're going to have round-of-the-year rounds like Morales, Barrera, Corrales, Castillo, Fury, and Wilder, where it's these vicious exchanges. I don't think both guys get down like that. They're more 1, 2, 3 punches at the most fighters. Place a bomb. So it'll be tense, kind of like Rolly and Tank was. It was tense. It wasn't a big pace, but you were kind of on the edge of your seat because every punch had power on it. But in terms of not stylistic, but in terms of what's the best matchup at lightweight, what's the Crawford Spence of lightweight? It's Haney and Tank, and I've said that first, and I'm going to keep saying that. And it's even going to be Haney and Tank in that it's going to be hard to make, and we're going to have to wait a while before it potentially gets done. So stylistically, probably Ryan and Tank because it's going to end in a knockout and every punch is going to have explosiveness written on it. But in terms of finding out who that true top dog is, I think it's Tank and Devin. And you could insert Shakur in there and replace either guy with Shakur, and that works too. But I think Tank and Devin would be the real fight for supremacy. Will Crawford become 3 times undisputed? Well, no, he won't. Because he would have to become undisputed at 47 and beating Spence, and then become undisputed at 54 and beating Charlo. And at this point, we'll be fortunate for him to get an opportunity to become 2-time undisputed. Forget about putting 3-time undisputed in the bag. If I had to put money on it, I'm selling. No, he's not going to finish his career as 3-time undisputed. Hopefully, he gets an opportunity to be 2-time undisputed. So Tank versus Ryan isn't no great fight. Haney versus Shakur is the fight to make. Tank not even better than Loma. I think Tank right now is better than Loma. Tank versus Ryan, it's not the fight that's going to determine without a shadow of a doubt who the best lightweight in the world is, but it is the biggest box office fight. It is the fight that's going to produce the most asses and seats, and that's what these guys fight for, man. It's prize fighting. So I do think it's a very credible matchup. Ryan's never been in a title fight, but he passes the eye test in terms of he's big at lightweight. He's as fast as they come, and he punches hard. And he's got a terrific amateur background, and so those two faces on a marquee, they're going to sell out. No problem. I do think the pay-per-view would do excess in over 500,000 buys. It would do bigger numbers than a Crawford-Spence fight, for example. So it's not a fight that would decide lightweight supremacy, but it would decide who's the fucking draw. Decide who's the ticket seller. B Black, do you know why? Biff, he got dropped from the WBA rankings because he went the IBF route. These fucking rankings, isn't it kind of ridiculous? I don't know if you should be penalized for picking up another belt by the other, but that's what it was, Biff. Him fighting for that interim IBF belt against Jukajan. The WBA said, "Oh, well, you can't be in our rankings anymore." Then, they felt some kind of way about it. Raja Cardio. I'm a Tank fan, but as a boxing fan, I hope Ryan cracks him with the left hook and Tank overcomes it. Both will still continue their careers. Legendary. Okay, so you're hoping that Tank wins the fight, but he has to get up off the canvas from a left hook to do it. That he has to come through adversity, because we haven't really had to see that. That's something you want to see every fighter go through, right? Because at some point they answer all the other questions. Are his hands fast? Yeah. Can he move his head? Does he got good defense? Yeah. Can he get the knockout? Is he a finisher? Yeah. Can he box? Can he do this? Yeah. And then at some point, one of the last questions is, well, what happens if someone puts him on his ass? And so, yeah, that from that aspect, it would be cool. Let's see. Fender Bender, you are too kind, man. Thank you. Devontae Johnson, Pitbull versus Ryan would have been good, but if Ryan's going to fight Tank Devontae, why not Pitbull and Rolly? I would love that fight. And if Rolly is on his, I'm only going to fight whoever thinks Marvel sucks is delusional and living in a cave. Did I offend you earlier, Adonis? I'm sorry, man. I'm like, I love Martin Scorsese movies, and when Martin shitted all over Marvel, I just had to co-sign Martin Scorsese when he said they're more like theme park rides than they are true art films about what it is to be a human being. That was deep, and I kind of agree with him, man. But Adonis, just so I didn't totally lose you, I got the Marvel versus Capcom cabinet right there. I got the Sega Dreamcast behind me with the Marvel versus Capcom too. So we got love for Marvel, okay? Just when it's, a fighting game with Capcom. That's all. We got this on, I'm sorry, Adonis. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to offend you. Anyways, back to the boxing. Oh, again, if Rolly doesn't want to do the Pitbull fight because he's on his I only want to fight superstars now, then how about Pitbull and Frank Martin? that works too. Pitbull and Frank Martin works. I think Frank Martin wins that fight, but that works. I would love that fight. Rebecca Contreras with the you see me, Rebecca? You played some Marvel vs. Capcom 2, right? MSP, Magneto, Storm, Psylocke. AJ, you feel me? Michael H. The Dreamcast is ancient. It is, but it's timeless. It's a classic. That shit is timeless. What do I think the fight of the year is, Rich? I gave it to Taylor and Serrano. And no, not to be the guy who says, look at me, I'm the guy who gave it to girls. Isn't that beautiful? They deserved it. I was going to give it to Lubin and Fundora, but then I realized Lubin and Fundora wasn't for the undisputed title like it was Taylor and Serrano. Both fights were neck and neck with how great they were, Lubin and Fundora and Taylor and Serrano. But what puts Taylor and Serrano over the top is that it was for the undisputed titles. It was fought for all the marbles. So if two fights are equally as great, but one held more significance, that's going to give it the edge. Let's see. Mike HG. Hey, Sean, is Spence even a big draw, really? What makes him that? The Hispanic fighters had a lot to do with that. I do think the Mikey Garcia getting that Mexican fan base to help crowd into that AT&T Stadium where they sold 48,000 that night. That was smart. That was savvy. That was a savvy move by Al and PBC to make that fight and capitalize on the geography, and it worked. And I think it worked so that he is a draw on his own now. And the evidence of that, Mike, is that the Ugas fight. I attended that fight ringside. The atmosphere was pretty damn good, pretty awesome. There was about 40,000 people there, and it was all Spence fans. And so that solidified to me, the man is definitely a draw in Texas. And then when I saw Michael Irvin after the fight going crazy, and you had some NFL players and NBA players and sports analysts. The next Monday, I think Skip and Shannon talked about the fight for a moment even. And that told me, okay, Errol's moving the needle here. He's causing some impact. So, no, Errol can draw, especially in Texas. He can draw. Is he, Floyd Mayweather? No. Is he Canelo Alvarez? No. But he is a draw. And so, yeah, he's a draw. But question: did Spence vacate out the mud, Cody? No, out the mud, Cody. No vacating yet. Nothing. Apparently, he will have 60 days after the Thurman fight to decide whether he'll vacate or not. Although that was kind of, roughly stated. We'll need more updates on that. But that is what we got so far out the mud. Raja Cardio, why y'all acting like Ryan is a nobody? I don't like how he pulls out of fights, but he has the fastest hands in the division, second most power, the best punch in the division, and way bigger than Tank. All good points by Cardio. The resume's not there for Ryan, but the eye test is there. If you know your boxing, you know this kid's dangerous. Because he has the things you can't teach. You can't teach punching power, you can't teach hand speed, and you can't teach size. The things you can teach that you get better at as a pro, Tank has the advantages: feints, defense, head movement, traps, disguising the shot, working your levels with your punches, throwing the right hook to the body to set up the straight left down the pipe up top. Tank's the more seasoned fighter. He's been in a handful of title fights, and you could say it's not against the biggest killers, but some of those have been some pretty quality fighters. Jose Pedraza, Leo Santa Cruz, even Barrios, Esau Cruz, Rolly Romero, laugh if you want, is a dangerous guy. So Tank is seen an assortment of styles in front of big crowds. He's got some savvy and some experience. This kid is green compared to Gervonta, but he still has a chance. He's got hand speed, size, and power, but Tank's got to be the favorite in that fight, objectively speaking. I mean, for all the reasons I just said. It's funny. For all the power and the speed in that fight and the star power, it might come down to the real subtleties of the sweet science, feints, positioning that gets Tank the win in that fight. It might literally come down to a feint. Tank feinting early, giving away early rounds, but seeing how Ryan reacts to feints and then taking advantage of that reaction later in the fight. Could see that happening. Did you know the IBF made Rashidi versus Villa into a title eliminator? I did know that. So now maybe Villa is positioned to fight Boots, which I think Boots will look a lot better with that style than Shukajan. If you put him in against Villa, who's just going to come right to him, you're going to see Boots look dynamite again. Probably. Let's see. Adonis, no harm, no foul. Not what Bob said. I missed some comments by you, Gregorius. Let me see. If you go by facts, you can blame both, but the truth is Bud is moving the goal over and over. Gregorius, what you mean, man? Terrence Crawford's just lies. I really get opinions it's funny the diversity of opinions you get surrounding Crawford Spence, and both people will build a very convincing argument both ways that it is, so let me see. Tank will run into a left hand. He's too small. Possible. He does got to cut the distance. He could run into the left hook. But he can move his head too, so he's not just coming in without head movement. Definitely don't count Ryan out. So hopefully it happens, man. I'm optimistic that it'll happen. Let's see. Martin versus Davis, who you got? Derek McGee. Oof. I'll still go with Tank. Big experience at that level. Bright lights. Martin looked fantastic against Michelle Rivera. But it's a step up fighting in front of 20,000 as opposed to fighting in front of 500 at the Cosmopolitan. I saw them spar, and it was good work. Wish I could expect, I'll leave it at that. But sparring and the fight are obviously two different things. I would have to give the edge to Gervonta, but Frank Martin is a tough fight for anybody at lightweight. Haney, Stevenson, Tank, he's a tough fight for anybody. They got a lot on their plate to deal with him. He's strong, skilled, can punch, has real pop. He's not a concussive guy, but he has pop and speed, hand speed. So Frank Martin's a problem. Keyshawn Davis. Keyshawn, I think, in the long run, will be the more promising professional than Frank Martin. Frank Martin started at 18 years old. Keyshawn's a thoroughbred who started since he was a little kid. Obviously won the silver medal. So I think Keyshawn projects to have a higher ceiling than Frank Martin. But right now, Frank Martin is the more seasoned professional and definitely has more of his grown man strength than Keyshawn Davis. I'd probably favor Frank Martin if they had to fight tonight, but they're not going to fight anytime soon. And I do think Keyshawn, with his pedigree and his talent, he projects to have the better pro career than Frank Martin. But right now, Frank Martin would have the edge. Modern King Boxing. I remember you being in Bud's gym. I was the only in there supporting adrenaline because these YouTubers, dummies, only like dramas and not real boxers like Crawford. Appreciate you, Modern King Boxing. Let's see. Jermaine Ortiz, a real player at 135. Nah, he's more like like I said about Alexis Roca earlier. He's not a guy I think is going to get to the top of the division, but it can't be all superstars in the division. You need legit, solid pros that can fight and can handle themselves in there in a division, and that's who Jermaine Ortiz is, like Alexis Roca at welterweight. Jermaine, I think, might be a step ahead of Alexis Roca. I mean, he was neck and neck with Lomachenko. So he's proven to fight at a high level, but no, I don't think Jermaine is a threat to Shakur or Tank or Devin. But he's good. Let's see. Does Boots fight Villa next? He might. I think he wins that fight if that's the case. And with a guy not playing keep away, fighting for his life and not fighting to win the fight, then I think he's going to look a lot better against a style like Romain Villa. Andrade beats Charlo and Benavidez and more. I don't think so, Black Ray Donovan. I think both of those guys beat Andrade. I think Andrade tails off after the first couple rounds. He's really good. Andrade is still Andrade. He's a formidable fighter for anybody. But he's not the biggest guy coming up from 54. I think he would win rounds against Jamal Charlo, but Jamal Charlo's right hand at some point, right hand against southpaw, I think he would hurt Andrade badly. We saw guys like Liam Williams with his right hand stun Andrade, shake his legs up a little bit a couple times in their fight. I think Jamal Charlo's power could change that fight. I think Andrade could be winning that fight in the first 4, 5, 6 rounds, but Charlo would hurt him with a right hand and change the fight. I don't think he'd beat Benavidez. I don't think a guy like him, 154, 34 years old, going on 35, legs are heavy. They're not what they once were. So you got to stay in range and fight more with a naturally bigger guy, younger guy. I don't think he beats Benavidez. Him and Charlo, if they could both get down to 160, that would be great. If they fight 68, that works too. But I give the edge to Charlo, even though I think Andrade would be banking some rounds early. Let's see. Ronaldo Gomez, who ends with the best legacy? Haney, Shakur, or Tank? Great question, and I think all three are gonna make the Hall of Fame probably when it's all said and done. I think Tank, resume wise, if you were just judging the level of opposition of the fighters they faced, is a little bit ahead of the other two, but Shakur and Devin have what Tank doesn't have in their accomplishments, in that they've been regarded as the top dog in their divisions because they've unified. Shakur, when he fought Valdez, that was looked upon as number 1 versus number 2. 2 belts on the line, and he walked away the winner. Devin, when he fought Kambosos, Kambosos, not a highly touted undisputed champion, but an undisputed champion nonetheless. So if you just look at the names themselves, Tank has the better resume right now over those two, as he should. He's been fighting longer. He's a couple years older. He's been fighting at this level longer than them, so logic would tell you he's got a little bit better resume. But he lacks the unified. He lacks the undisputed. He lacks the time he fought number 1 versus number 2. Shakur did that when he fought Valdez. Devin got all 4. You could talk about Kambosos, caught T.O. on the perfect night and all, but those 4 belts were those 4 belts. So, but who do I think will finish on top? I think Haney, because Haney's frame is going to allow him to move up the most weight divisions. He's the youngest out of the 3, but he's the only one out of the 3 to secure undisputed already. So that bodes well. And I think him being 5'9", 5'9 and a half, the other 2 being 5'6", 5'7", 5'5", I think he's going to be the guy who can get as far as 154 pounds. I think Tank and Shakur will top out at 140. And so because of that, Shakur will finish as a 4-division champion if that's the case. Tank will finish as a 3-division champion. And I think Devin, 35, 40, 47, 54, 4-division champion too, like Shakur. I think Devin, because he has the frame to go up all the way to welterweight. So we'll see. I like all 3. Like watching all 3 fight. Think highly of all 3. So, K. Bwine, you look like Ashton Kutcher when he played in the Butterfly Effect. Thank you. Appreciate it. I'm just always happy when we avoid the Drake Bell for 1 minute. And now that I said Drake Bell, I know the Drake Bell's going to come, but I'm happy when we get Ashton Kutcher as the comparison. So I'll take that. I'll take Ashton Kutcher. Cardio said Haney will most likely go after Legacy. Well, Haney is going to have an interesting proposition in his hands soon. Once he gets finished with Lomachenko and Tank gets finished with Ryan, clearly the best fight out there is going to be for Devin Tank, right? He went through all the hoops to get what he wanted once with Kambosos, right? Okay, I got to go from this network to that network. I got to fly overseas to that country, and I really only want to fight Kambosos, but you're telling me I have to fight a 3-fight, multi-fight deal in order to secure this fight? All right, where do I sign? He may have to do that he will have to do that probably to get Gervonta. And it's harder when a fighter has deservedly had the ego inflated by becoming the undisputed champion. Your ego, your sense of self-value goes up, deservedly so. So it was easier to pitch that to someone like Devin when he didn't have a belt, when he was 22, 23. It's going to be harder to sell him on doing what he did for Kambosos for Tank. Go to Showtime, sign with PBC, a multi-fight deal, essentially agree to their terms if you want what Tank has, which is the superior marketability, the superior, draw, all the rappers, all the ball players, and the famous people knowing who he is. And some of those people know who Devin is too, but not quite like Tank. If he wants the juice, he might have to go through all that stuff that he did for Kambosos all over again for Tank. So I think that's a decision that might be coming up soon, is do we re-up with Top Rank and go to 140 where there's a plethora of good fighters, Ramirez, maybe, Prograis is now not an option, unfortunately. But Ramirez, Teofimo, Josh Taylor, or after you're finished with Loma, do you set your sights on Tank? You let the public know this is the fight that should be made, and you try to do business with the PBC to get that fight done. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. It's just something to keep an eye on. Let's see. No fighters are. I don't. Max Santana, you don't think Shakur can go up to 47? I think him and Tank at some point will probably have a fight at 47 because 47 is always the money division, and money will probably take them up. But they're gonna be blown up lightweights when they fight at welterweight. Devin, when he gets to welterweight, is gonna be a welterweight. He's gonna grow into the division as a full-fledged welterweight. I see Tank and Shakur are gonna be, blown up lightweights, and that doesn't mean they still can't have success. But I think they're going to be more optimal at 140, and that'll kind of be their. We're talking about guys who are Pacquiao, he was able, with or without the help of the Alex Ariza Shakes, was able to get up as high as 47 and 54 at that height. That's a lot to ask for a guy at 5'5", 5'6", 5'7", and they probably will have a fight or two at 47 at some point, but I don't think they're going to be as optimal at 47 as they are 35 and 40. So, Brennan Smith, what makes you think Haney wins against Loma? Well, Loma's seen better days. Still a good fighter, but he's seen better days. He's a guy who's had injuries, who's in his mid-30s, who started his career as a featherweight at 126. Devin started his career as a lightweight, 135. He's a naturally bigger guy. He's more than 10 years younger. Like I said, Loma's the injured guy. Devin's been the more active guy. He's ascending in his skills. Lomachenko, if anything, is declining in his skills. When you put all that together, it's really logical to favor Haney in that fight. That and Haney's got some length on him, man, and Lomachenko, if he can step inside, if the old, the vintage Lomachenko shows up and he can do his magic with that, stepping over the lead foot and step into mid-close range and make Haney overshoot the jab, overshoot the long right hand, step inside of it and piece him up, okay, maybe Lomachenko can make something happen. But I just think Devin has the feet, like Tio did when he fought Lomachenko. If you're athletic and have the coordination and the footwork to offset Lomachenko constantly trying to get to your outside foot and keep the jab on him. Tio wasn't even landing the jab, but he just kept it in his face constantly. You can dictate from range, and Tio was able to do that with an inaccurate jab. I think Devin could definitely do it with an accurate jab. So I got Devin. Damn, we've been going for 2 hours now, chat? Am I just blabbing at this point? Should I get going? Yeah, season 1 dubs. That's what I was just noticing. So yeah, let's close though. Let's close chat with a little for the man for the what we came here for the hour. Thurman Spence. Okay, just to recap. I think the consensus. I don't think I'm being Teddy Atlas here by picking Spence to overwhelm him once we get to deep waters. Take him deep waters. That's going to be the consensus, right? By most analysts, most trainers, and people who watch boxing. So I'm not like going out on a limb there. Thurman, though, first half of the fight should be dangerous, and he's really good at punching around, at sweeping his shots around the guard. Throwing the right hand like a right hook, sweeping it. Obviously, the left hook. And he's beautiful at finishing up with that uppercut to punctuate. Sometimes he can even throw an uppercut jab. He jumps into his shots. But Errol's not a traditional counterpuncher. I think jumping into his shots would cost him more with Crawford style, who punches in between your punches and is a natural counterpuncher. Errol's more go and get you, get off first behind the jab, and beat your ass, wear you down. So against that style, Thurman should be able to lay some traps and walk him into some, place some bombs and maybe get away with jumping in here or there because Thurman's not going to, or Spence isn't going to catch him with a lightning check hook and counter punch. I mean, I'm sure he can take advantage if he jumps in one too many times and walk him into something too. But I think Thurman can produce some fireworks for us in the first 6 rounds before he gets taken to deep waters and drowned. So, that's my thought on that fight. It's not a horrible fight by any means. So, what you got, chat? Thurman's going to run all night, 3 pumps said. 3 pumps. I don't think he got the legs anymore in his 30s to run all night. This ain't 2016. This ain't Leonard Bundu Thurman. That's what I mean. Fireworks, 3 pumps. Like, he ain't got the legs to do that anymore. So that means his best shot, he's going to have to throw bombs to keep Errol off of him or hope to slow his pace down. So from a logical standpoint, not from a rah-rah, we want to see a great fight. From a logical standpoint, his best chance is to take some chances in the first half of the fight, to throw some bombs in hopes of making him timid, hurting him badly early, maybe knocking him down once or twice, and getting him not to just throw without respect, to just get to 80, 90. If some hard placed bombs, counters, or he's being walked into him, that could maybe slow his pace down, maybe shock people and catch him with a shot he doesn't see coming, but I think because of that, because of assessing the fight, I think the first 6 rounds, there will be fireworks in Thurman Spence. But if Thurman can't make something dramatic happen in those first 6 rounds, he's going to get drowned in deep waters. I think that's how most people are going to see the fight happening. I still like the way Thurman sweeps his shots. I do still like the way he can come around the guard with those explosive shots when he jumps in. He's still savvy, but yeah. Let's see. Thurman in it for the dough. Thurman can't take those body shots, says the Bronco Kid. Cowboy Stadium with the thumbs down from IB. I'm down for Cowboy Stadium again. Fuck it. I'll go. I'm down. Rebecca Contreras says Spence gives black eyes, no KOs. I mean, shit. TKO, KO goes down as a KO, right? First round, Spence getting busy to the ribs. Well, no, Spence is going to come behind that jab in the first round. It's usually round 3 when he takes off. I think round 1, it's going to be the jab for Spence. He couldn't even hurt Mario. Yeah, that was a rough look. Like the eye test still looks good. You look at the shots, you hear the impact, and it still sounds good, but it's not a good look that Barrios was able to hold up for 12 rounds but got knocked out by a destructive puncher at lightweight, but a lightweight nonetheless. That a lightweight knocked him out, but a welterweight couldn't hurt him badly. But I still think Thurman's got pop, even if the KOs haven't been there in a while. Yeah. Keep it real. NB Moore said, keep it real. No one is giving Thurman a shot. We got to stop paying a puncher's chance with professional fighters. You mean don't buy the fight, B Moore? Errol's going to show Thurman why he ducked him when he was the man. Yeah, Bronco Kid. I think Errol's going to carry more spite into the ring. I think he's just got more spite in him as a fighter these days than Keith Thurman. Keith Thurman is got a little bit more of a peaceful soul in him than Errol Spence, who still has that edge to him. Is Errol Spence holding up the division by having this fight at 54? Kind of, yeah. A little bit. Him and Terrence. Terrence by fighting Avanesian and not taking on Ortiz or Ennis, and then, technically, he is, but it is what it is. I wonder how the sanctioning bodies feel about missing out on their 3%, their coveted 3%. I bet you they are literally they are the least happiest people with today's announcement of Spence and Thurman, that they do not get their 3%. Nobody's more pissed off than WBC and WBA and IBF about this. L5D. DC was lit Saturday. Were you in the building, L5D? Were you in the building? Tell me what it was like, man. Drop a comment in the chat. What was that like on fight night? DC was packed with thoughts. Nice. So it was a talent show, huh? There was talent on hand. You were the talent scout, AJ? L5D, hell yeah, I'm from DC. Shout out to DC then, man. Thank you for chopping in the chat. That's what's up. Yeah, I saw everyone came out and support Tank. I saw that, L5D, because again, it's not like Tank, although it's different when every punch is a bomb and you could hear it throughout the arena. But sometimes crowds, if they're not seeing a war, they're quick to boo, and I've noticed Tank's crowds are supported. Like, they're okay with that slow pace. They just want to see him win the fight. So that's good. That's good that you don't have a crowd that you got to go out there and throw, 100 punches within the first 2 or 3 rounds to keep them engaged in the fight. They like his style. They understand how he fights, and it's okay if he's throwing 30 punches, 20 punches around, because as long as they get that knockout that they feel is inevitable, they're good. Sold out, of course. LOL. Oh, yeah, I know Tank's for Baltimore, but DC, the DMV, right? Baltimore, Maryland, and DC. I mean, we forget Sugar Ray Leonard came from the DMV, Palmer Park, Maryland. Does Spence KO Thurman? I think he stops him in the second half. Rebecca Contreras, geez. That's a bit much. You think so? I don't think so. So, yeah. But that's about it, man. I think that's about all I got for you guys. I'm probably just blabbing at this point, but I just felt remiss if Spence and Thurman went down and we didn't talk about it, didn't give some initial impression of the fight. So it's going down. I don't think I'm going out on a limb. I think I'm towing the line. I'm stating the consensus. But those first 6 rounds, I think, will have some fireworks. In the meantime, let's see Crawford go over to the zone and take the Ortiz fight. He's just mandatory anyways. After that, sounds like Spence has 60 days. Try to make the fight in those 60 days. If Crawford could fight like an Ortiz, that fight would get way bigger with that win. Or if Ortiz scored the upset, now Ortiz and Spence is a super fight in Dallas. So we'll see what happens. But if Spence is going to stick around 54, we'll keep our eyes on if Charlo maybe will happen after all. After we went back and watched that clip, for Ennis and Ortiz are literally 1 and 2 for every sanctioning body except the WBA, where Ennis was recently moved out because he went the IBF route, but he's still in the top 2 of the WBC, the IBF, and the WBO. So if Spence is going to vacate, if Crawford's going to vacate, literally, the 2 guys we all thought were in line are in fact in line for all those belts, Ennis and Ortiz. So we'll see how it all shakes out. Last super chat here from Akilo Netter. Thank you so much for the $5, my brother. Do you think Tank fights Devin once he moves to 140? Does Devin re-sign to Top Rank? Good question, and a question only time will really reveal. Do I think Tank fights Devin once he moves to 140? I think if the fight's going to happen, Akilo, that is the weight class it's going to happen. I don't think we ever see Tank and Devin at 35, because Devin is going to have his final fight with Top Rank against Lomachenko in all likelihood at 35, and I think that's it. I think that's a wrap for Devin at 35. He'll go to 40. Do I think Haney re-signs to Top Rank? I'm speculating. We shall see. I would lean towards yes. That he would. So it's always easier to re-sign with who you're already working with once you have a comfortable working relationship. They do have some solid fights. ESPN is the worldwide leader in sports, so it's a good brand. But like I said, it's kind of going to be like Crawford and Spence again, where it's like the number one fight that's probably the best fight to be made in your career is Tank. And even though I'm of the opinion it should be a sport. Fights happening shouldn't just be predicated on who you're signed with as a promoter. If I'm number one and you're number two, but our promoters don't like to work with each other, tough shit. It's a sport. That's where it does need to be a sport, not a business. But that's not how this business works. Not with any of these companies. So if the fight with Tank and Devin's going to happen at 140, it's going to mean Devin not re-signing with Top Rank. And since Tank is the draw, he'll have to go over to the PBC side to make the fight happen. Some people will say, Devin's the undisputed champ. Why does he have to go over there? But I think that's how it'll shake out. If Devin and Tank happens at 140, it's going to probably have to be Devin who crosses that street and makes it happen like he did for Kambosos. So we'll see if that happens. All speculation. We'll see after you never know. He could also go back with Eddie Hearn, who I know him and Bill loved working with, so we'll see. But I would inch towards probably re-signing with Top Rank, but I mean, I don't know. Well, it really does remain to be seen after the Lomachenko fight. Missing small super chat. Oh, whoops. Thank you. Oh, cardio again. Thurman needs to be doing sit-ups right now. Again, cardio. Apparently he did more sit-ups, as you can see. Did more sit-ups for Barrios than he did when he became the unified champion against Garcia. So, I think he's taken some of Cardio's advice already. He might be doing that already. Cardio said DAZN didn't want Dev anymore. That can always change, though. I don't even know if that's true. I think they tried to secure Kambosos, but Kambosos ultimately was secured by ESPN Top Rank. I don't think Eddie Hearn and Matchroom have closed that door. I don't agree with that. So we'll see. If it makes money, if it makes dollars, it makes sense. North Baltimore, EJ ducking Bud to fight Thurman. Thurman was always on the table. This whack. North B more, though, to be fair, there's a good chance that Thurman was always on the table, but as a plan B. They tried to make the Crawford fight first and foremost. And when that couldn't happen, they inevitably had their backup that they always had ready. So I think that's more the case. I do. Not only Dev, they let go of the USA plan. Yeah, because it wasn't working. Yeah, it wasn't working. But I think that they're still a company, still in business. They still want to put some cards on in America. That's why I think cardio that it's possible, them being in a little bit of a desperate situation to get quality fights in America, that Crawford could get a big guarantee, the kind of guarantees he's looking for, fighting Ortiz on DAZN. We'll see. That's the move I'm hoping he's able to make. If EJ want to test 154, fight Fundora, yeah, that's the best fight outside of Charlo in that division for Spence. But fuck that. Let's go right to Spence and Charlo. So, but yeah, I think that about does it, guys. Thank you so much for joining me. Hope we had some fun talking, man. I gotta read the chats a little bit early. At first, when we first start, I'm like, I want to get some points in. I don't want to just lose you guys. Give you something to chew on, and then we start talking. But we'll get better at it as we go along. Eddie Hearn said he's not interested in Bud. Said cardio. Damn. Yeah, he talked about well, talk to Joe Markowski and the DAZN people, right? But I guess it's if you work with DAZN, you're working with Eddie Hearn and vice versa. Damn, cardio, that's cold. Whatever, just try anyway. Just go over there. Let's just try to get that big guarantee out of him. But Leonard Blavatnik got a lot of money, right? He got deep pockets. Who cares? Just get, I just think that's the best option for Crawford now that Thurman and Spence is going on. So, But all right, guys. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for joining us on Fight Hype. Keep it locked in throughout, and we'll keep it locked in as well, guys. Thanks so much. Keep it locked in, and everyone have a good night.